Welcome to Episode 79, Multi-Entity and Multi-System Scoping, where we explore the challenge of defining what is inside and outside of an assurance boundary when several organizations or systems are involved. Scoping in a single environment is already demanding, but when multiple legal entities, shared services, and distinct business lines are interconnected, clarity becomes critical. Each boundary decision affects how evidence is gathered, how responsibility is shared, and how auditors evaluate compliance. Without a precise and defensible scope, assessments become confused, redundant, or incomplete. The goal in multi-entity contexts is to preserve accuracy and efficiency, making sure every system and data flow is covered by someone, but never double-counted or overlooked. The starting point for any multi-entity discussion is understanding legal ownership and responsibility. Each entity may operate under its own name, tax identifier, and set of contracts, even when under a single corporate group. These distinctions matter because they determine who holds accountability for compliance obligations and incident response. For instance, a parent company may own infrastructure while subsidiaries handle customer operations. Clarity here prevents assumptions that one party's certification automatically extends to another. Scoping documentation should specify each entity's role, whether as controller, processor, or service provider, and define where their responsibilities begin and end. Legal structure shapes both governance and evidence collection throughout the assurance process. Entity-specific systems, on the other hand, require isolated treatment. These include local databases, applications, or manufacturing control systems unique to a single business line. Their inclusion in scope depends on whether they process or store data relevant to the assessment's objectives. For instance, a regional billing system that handles protected health information must fall within scope even if other systems are centrally managed. Conversely, an isolated test environment without production data may remain out of scope. Mapping these boundaries ensures that each entity's unique operational context receives proper evaluation without inflating the overall scope unnecessarily. Data flows between entities reveal the true operational interconnections. Mapping these flows shows how information moves, where it is transformed, and who controls it at each stage. Visual diagrams and written descriptions clarify whether data crosses legal or geographic boundaries, which affects privacy and regulatory exposure. For example, a subsidiary might collect data in one country and transfer it to the parent company's analytics platform elsewhere. By tracing these movements, teams can confirm encryption, contractual safeguards, and jurisdictional compliance. Data flow mapping turns abstract structure into concrete evidence that no information is left unprotected as it moves through the organization. Protected data types often vary by entity, influencing which controls and regulations apply. One business unit might handle financial records, another medical data, and another only employee information. Each type carries different compliance implications and risk weightings. Identifying which entity processes which data ensures proportional protection and prevents overextension of privacy controls where not required. For example, applying healthcare-grade encryption to a system that only holds public marketing materials may waste resources. Conversely, underestimating sensitivity leads to exposure. Aligning data classification with entity scope creates balanced, defensible control application that fits each environment's real-world needs. Differing regulatory and contractual drivers further complicate multi-entity scoping. Entities may be subject to distinct industry standards, privacy laws, or customer requirements. For instance, one subsidiary might fall under the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, while another aligns to payment card industry standards. Harmonizing these obligations prevents conflicting controls and allows auditors to map evidence efficiently. A regulatory matrix can show which clauses apply where, ensuring that no obligation is ignored and no entity bears unnecessary duplication. Managing these differences transforms a potential tangle of rules into a coherent compliance strategy supported by shared governance. Inheritance and provider scope determine how controls flow between entities or from external partners. When a shared provider implements a control, such as physical security in a hosted data center, entities may inherit those protections rather than re-implement them locally. Inheritance reduces redundancy but requires clear evidence of applicability, coverage, and monitoring. For example, if a cloud provider supplies vulnerability management, the customer must still show oversight and verification. Within corporate groups, one entity might provide managed services to others under formal agreements. Documenting these relationships clarifies accountability and ensures inherited controls remain demonstrably effective across all dependent entities. Evidence separation and labeling maintain clarity when multiple entities contribute documentation. Each piece of evidence should indicate which entity and system it supports, preventing confusion during audits. Central repositories may host shared data, but labeling ensures retrieval accuracy. For example, a screenshot of access logs should specify whether it comes from Entity A's finance system or Entity B's development platform. Consistent naming conventions and folder structures reduce errors when evidence is reviewed months later. Evidence management thus becomes a parallel control demonstrating discipline and transparency within complex organizational boundaries. Sampling alignment across entities ensures fairness and efficiency in verification. Auditors often sample records, systems, or users to test control effectiveness, but multi-entity environments require careful selection to represent the whole population. Oversampling wastes time. Undersampling risks missing critical variations. Coordinated planning identifies where processes are identical and where they differ. For instance, identical onboarding procedures across all entities may justify shared sampling, while distinct regional processes require separate testing. Proper alignment creates confidence that conclusions apply broadly without inflating effort or cost. It turns scoping from guesswork into structured validation. Risk differences and control tailoring recognize that not all entities face equal exposure. A small administrative office does not require the same physical security investment as a national data center. Tailoring controls allows each entity to meet the framework's intent without unnecessary burden. For example, the control requiring visitor escorting may be fulfilled differently in a remote office than in a high-security facility. Documenting rationale for each variation shows deliberate application rather than non-compliance. Tailoring keeps assurance realistic, scalable, and aligned with genuine business risk, reinforcing that effectiveness matters more than uniformity for its own sake. Governance cadence and decision rights bind the entire structure together. Multi-entity programs thrive when leadership defines how often decisions are reviewed, who approves changes, and how conflicts are resolved. Regular cross-entity meetings maintain alignment on shared controls, evidence collection, and reporting. For instance, quarterly governance boards can review risk updates and scope adjustments across subsidiaries. Clear decision rights prevent duplicated authority or contradictory directives. Governance cadence converts scattered participants into a coordinated team, turning structural complexity into manageable rhythm. It ensures that every entity's voice contributes to a unified compliance posture. Documented rationale and approvals serve as the audit trail for scoping decisions. Every inclusion, exclusion, or inheritance must be justified in writing and endorsed by accountable parties. These records prevent memory gaps and support transparency when regulators or auditors ask why certain systems were treated a particular way. For example, retaining the signed approval that excludes a marketing sandbox from scope demonstrates deliberate, defensible reasoning. Documentation transforms subjective judgment into verifiable governance, anchoring trust in the decision-making process itself. Over time, these records become institutional knowledge that simplifies future revalidations and assessments. Coherent, defensible, multi-entity scoping turns organizational complexity into structured assurance. It acknowledges diversity of systems, data, and obligations while maintaining unity of purpose and evidence. By clearly defining ownership, mapping data flows, documenting rationale, and aligning governance, organizations ensure that every part of their enterprise fits together without contradiction. This coherence supports efficient audits, reduces risk, and strengthens confidence across all stakeholders. In the end, the art of multi-entity scoping lies in clarity, making every boundary visible, every responsibility known, and every decision traceable from intent to proof.